In this chapter, we'll be talking about the completed room. We started with an empty space and built all the way up to a room that is fully furnished with decor and art. I'll talk through the 5 principles of design that I use every day. They are the filter for every design decision I make. And I'll show you examples of how they've come to life in this bedroom. So now it's time to see it all together. This is when we can understand how things are connecting with one another and really see the cohesive, completed room. When I was in design school, I learned these 5 principles. These have proven to be so helpful. I use them all the time. And now at this point, they're really second nature to me. I think they can be for you too. It's just a matter of becoming familiar with them, seeing how they actually come to life, understanding how they work in context with one another. But I'll walk you through all of that. I'll show you in this room how those 5 principles were put into play with each design decision that was made in this space. Those 5 principles are scale, balance, contrast, focus, and flow. So now let me walk you around the space and I'll show you different examples of each of those principles. So this wardrobe is a great example of scale, and that's because it's obviously a large piece of furniture filling a large wall. This room even, it's not a massive room, but it's not tiny either. So having a really big piece of furniture like this helps fill the space. Another example of scale would be on the opposite side of the room with the curtains that are hung over the windows. The reason this is an example of scale, in my opinion, is that it's reaching all the way to the ceiling. So it's taking your eye up. The scale of the curtains around the windows feels appropriate, especially considering the fact that there are other large pieces in the space. If I had chosen smaller curtains, they probably would have felt too small or shrunken or like they weren't the appropriate size for the size of these windows. Piggybacking off of these curtains, one thing that I was also thinking about when I selected these was balance. I was considering what on this side of the room can balance the very large wardrobe on the other side of the room. And I decided these tall curtains and this really interesting headboard and the art centered in the middle of the wall, all of those things together balance the wardrobe on the other side of the room. Another example of balance would be here on the nightstands. So I chose to have matching nightstands and matching lamps. I really wanted this whole wall to feel very symmetrical so that what's on one side almost matches what's on the other side. I could have chosen slightly different nightstands or slightly different lamps, but I think I would have still chosen them to be a similar size and scale so that overall both sides feel balanced with one another. Now let's talk about contrast. I've actually used contrast quite a bit in this space. One example would be this bright headboard against these dark, kind of muted walls. Then another example is this bright bedding, light ivory color inside of a really dark room. Both of those things are examples of contrast with color. But you can also contrast in other ways. Maybe it's 2 very different styles of furniture. For example, over here, this really traditional classic chest of drawers. It has these classic details on the side. This is in contrast with the wardrobe that is a very distinctly Art Deco style of furniture. So just the style difference between these 2 pieces is contrasting one another. And you'll find as you're making furniture decisions that one contrast might work where another one doesn't. So it's not to say that every choice where you have 2 different styles of furniture will work. You really just have to wait and see what feels right together. I also love that this wardrobe in and of itself is so different from everything else in the room. It's really a statement piece. It's much lighter and brighter color than the walls, similar to the bed. And it's also a lot brighter wood tone than this piece here. So these are contrasting in color as well as style. So next, focus. One of my favorite principles, because this is where you can make a big, bold decision. Focus is about where your attention goes in a space. So that could be a very bold color or something very interesting and detailed. Our headboard is both of those things. This bed is both brightly colored and has a really detailed and interesting pattern on it. So that makes it this focus of this space where you walk in and it catches your attention. Focus could also be multiple things together. So the headboard with the art, with the drapery that goes all the way up to the ceiling, all of that together makes this a really dramatic part of the room and catches your attention. It's gaining a lot of focus. I think deciding where you want to make a focal statement in your room at the beginning of the process is one of the most important things you can do. It helps you decide, where am I going to go big and where am I going to kind of pull back and be a little more restrained. If everything was big, if everything was bold and patterned and layered, it would be overwhelming. So I tend to push the envelope a bit more in general, and maybe dark walls and a bold headboard aren't for everyone, but even with a darkly colored wall, I think this still stands out as a clear focal point. So finally, the last principle, which is flow. And this is really just meant to describe how connections are made across a room, how it comes together to feel harmonious and connected. In our space, just a few of the things that I considered to make those connections were, first of all, color. So this dark chest of drawers with the dark chair across the room and the plant stand that's almost the same wood tone. Then also our wardrobe. It's this warm honey color. Nothing else in the room is exactly the same color, but you'll see little bits of it here in the headboard, in this fabric, and then again in the art. Even the smallest detail like that, you might not notice it right off the bat, but it's almost like you feel it when you walk in the space because it feels like things are connected. Another thing that I was considering was all of the off-white colors in the space. So the bedding, and then how that connects to the ivory in the rug, and then how that connects to the ivory in the curtains. Even the mat around our artwork. A little bit of ivory here in this piece of art. All of those things were purposely chosen to connect together. You can think of these principles as tools in your toolbox. These are things that you can pull out every once in a while when you find yourself stuck, or maybe you're looking at your space and you just feel like something isn't right. Use these as gut checks. That's what I do. Every once in a while, I'll just run them through my mind and go, okay, tick, 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 did I think about it? And then I feel more informed, I feel more confident to make a better decision. I hope you've learned a few things along the way watching me design our space and can apply some of those same things to your bedroom as well.